given the state of the economy, given the state of AI, people are starting to ask the question, is a college degree actually worth it anymore? And we'll talk about what that really means. But it is a topic of discussion that it's made its way to corporate media, where more and more young people are starting to feel as though going to college in the end just may not be worth it. Let's go ahead and get started with this clip here from Case Study QB. Shout out to Case. Let's dive right in.
Americans are asking, is college really worth it right now? It's been a debate on and off for many years, but now shocking new polling shows us Americans have growing doubts about investing in a college degree. 63% of Americans say a 4-year college degree is no longer worth the cost, according to an NBC News poll. That is
63% say no. That's a shocking number.
A sharp turn from that same poll from 2017, which showed 49% saying a degree is worth it versus a close 47% who didn't. You know, I guess I'm surprised a bit by the extent, by 63%, but I am not surprised that that number has been rising generally over the years. I mean, I'm a millennial. I have lots of friends saddled with debt who are also in a very shaky, uneasy job market right now, who feel like we've been sold a lot of things that turned out to not exactly be true about the way that our careers and lives and the cost of living we're going to work in this country. And so I'm not surprised then that the generations that they're raising, or the young kids they may have, or their younger siblings who watch them try to launch out into the world would be saying, well, maybe I should go to trade school. Or
pause here for just a second. So let me give you my perspective on this. I worked in the university for a little over 10 years. I was asking this question back in 2020. I think I still have that video on my channel about if a college degree was actually worth it. And to make a long story short, I think it depends on the field that you're going into, but I'm going to give you the warning about that as well, right? So here's the thing. These liberal arts degrees are trash. I'm just going to be straight with you guys. I am not an academic advisor anymore, so I can be a little bit more direct with you about this and not have to say this in such a friendly way. The liberal arts degrees are shit. Don't do it. It's a waste of your time and your money. Okay? No more majoring in history. No more majoring in philosophy. Just it's a waste of time. Okay? That's the first part. The second part. The problem that I have been noticing is that some of these other fields are becoming oversaturated. What that means is that so many people are majoring in certain STEM fields that it's getting to the point where there are just not enough jobs for everybody in those particular fields now. So it's a tricky situation, because it's like you want to tell people to follow your passion, but passion has to pay the bills. You know, that's the scary part. And that's the reality that hits a lot of people in the face. So then you tell people to pick something that is going to be more practical, that is going to pay your bills. If you took out student loans, obviously something that's going to help you pay off that student loan debt. Then a student comes to you and they say, okay, I want to major in computer science. I want to be a coder. I want to be a computer programmer. Okay, cool, great. But a lot of people are doing that now. And so what they're finding is that they're graduating and they're trying to get interviews for those positions. And it's just that market, it's so oversaturated now. Everybody's going into tech. Everybody's trying to be a part of a startup or create their own startup. You know, there's only so many people you can hire in the tech profession as well. And so this is similar to what I saw happen when I was in undergrad, where a lot of my friends majored in nursing. And that was a big thing at that time. And they went out into the job market, and some of them were able to find nursing jobs, but eventually the nursing field became oversaturated. Now, post-pandemic, that is changing a little bit from what I understand. But same thing with law. At one point, everybody was like, I'm going to law school. I'm going to be a lawyer. Everybody wanted to be a lawyer, you know? And so if too many people go into a field, it becomes oversaturated and there aren't enough jobs available for you anyway. Then there is the issue with AI, which I talked about earlier today, which is the reality is AI is starting to take some of these jobs, right? So we were warned about this by Andrew Yang. I didn't realize it was going to happen as soon as it is, but Microsoft has already laid off thousands of people. Forbes magazine has been talking about Goldman Sachs is laying off people. A lot of layoffs are happening. I just spoke to a friend the other day that the only job that she's been able to find is, of course, a contract position, which is only like 8 months to a year for a lot of them. And then it's like you're back job searching again. And a lot of times those positions don't provide benefits. So it's a tricky situation. So is a college degree worth it today? Here's what I would say. If you have to take out student loans to go to college, I would not choose a field that is going to give you a salary under $100,000 a year. Just going to be point blank with you. Because the reality is, you get the student loans, you major in something that you really like, and then you get a job. Like teaching is a good one, right? You always wanted to be a teacher. But in order to go to college, you have to take out student loans because your parents just ain't got it like that. So you take out the student loans to go into teaching. You get a teaching job, but as we all know, teaching doesn't pay much. You can get a bump of salary a little bit if you have a master's degree. Here in Massachusetts, particularly in Boston, they require a master's degree to teach here. But the reality is teachers don't make much, right? But now you got all the student loan debt. So you got the job, but you have all the student loans that you have to pay off. So how much of that money are you actually able to save? And if you can't really save much, then you can't put a down payment on a home. You'll never be able to buy a home anyway, right? This is the reality, folks. And a lot of people don't want to hear reality. I feel like sometimes people want to live in a fantasy world, but this is where we're at right now. So that's my advice. If you can't make at least $100,000 a year and you have to take out student loans, I would say pursue something else. Go to trade school. Become a dental hygienist if you like teeth. The pay there is pretty well. They make more than teachers do. And you won't have all that student loan debt. Just something to think about. Let's continue on.
Maybe I should be like learning to code or something. I don't necessarily have to go to college to do that. So I'm not that shocked by this, but it is to me very sad because of what this, I guess, represents about the American story and I guess a larger like unraveling of our fabric and what we've been told this whole project was supposed to be.
I mean, how much do you think, Catherine, that this is corruption of the higher education cartel in that the cost so skyrocketed and outpaced what people are making in salaries that it simply is unaffordable? You look at these numbers, and this also is a poll about affordability too. When you aren't going to move into a profession and be guaranteed a dramatically different salary that is going to repay those loans, why do it?
So I disagree with the premise of a lot of what we're talking about here. In particular, the sticker prices of college are very high, but particularly for elite schools, for flagship schools, very few people pay the sticker price. So it looks very unaffordable. But if we're talking about like a typical school that has admissions, that doesn't accept everyone, their prices actually that people pay, the net price that people pay is not as high as you would think. And I think that.
How many people get into those schools that she's talking about though? Right. So like if you get accepted to Harvard and financially, you can't afford it. Like now Harvard does, from what I understand, they do pay. Like, they'll be able to help you there. But how many people get into Harvard? How many people get into any of the Ivies? Like, let's be realistic here. Okay. So a lot of people, especially like when I was in high school, a lot of us went to state schools, right? I had friends that went to, the University of North Carolina. Even the University of North Carolina, which is a public university, is still expensive because it's a highly ranked school. It's hard to get into UNC too. Same thing with the University of Virginia, UVA. Also competitive. So here's the thing, folks. As much as we talk about student loan debt, the reality is I don't see any agency putting a cap on the universities and stopping them from increasing the tuition. And that's ultimately what the big problem is. If these universities can continue to increase the tuition, I mean, how do you compete with that unless your parents have money? My parents didn't have money. A lot of you watching me, you didn't come from money either. So my parents didn't have it like that. They were able to pay some for college, but I had to work when I was in undergrad, and I also had to take out student loans. So, here we are. And then depending on what profession you go into, if you want to move up in that profession, you may have to have a master's degree. So for me to be an academic advisor, I had to go to grad school for that. See that all these things just kind of come together. So I think the way that this is framed, when we talk about how low can you go, I think the framing needs to change a little bit. I think we should be encouraging younger people to go to trade schools. I heard that welding is very much needed. And from what I read, they get paid pretty well. I think we need to encourage young people to go to trade schools. I think we need to encourage them to pursue entrepreneurship, if that is a possibility as well. I feel like our whole lives we've been set up to go work for somebody else. I feel like a lot of us are not trained or positioned to create something of our own. And I think there's something that needs to be said for that. But I think we need to encourage people to go into the trades and, and stop looking down on that, because it's going to get to a point where your degree doesn't mean as much as you think it does. Because like I said, some of these jobs are going to be consumed by AI anyway. So, and nowadays, some of the younger people are becoming influencers and they're like, screw this. They're like, screw that. They decided to do TikTok or like Instagram or something. That's not guaranteed and it doesn't work for everybody. But I think we need to change the framing instead of just telling people, well, I think these colleges are actually affordable, or, well, no, it's not really. Like, we have to give people direction instead of just saying this is how it is and it sucks. So start leading them to other alternatives. I think that's important.
There's a little bit of a disconnect between the branding for these schools and what people actually pay. And then if you look at, in the long run, how much additional salary people make as a result of going to school, it actually more than pays for itself. Now, there is a set of bad actors. There are a lot of these fly-by-night for-profit online schools where often people don't graduate. They are saddled with all this debt, but they don't get the payoff of the degree, of the credentials, of the additional skills. And those people are often screwed. And I fear that there has been greater support, particularly among Republican administrations, to let those institutions rip. And that's not a good thing. You want more information available to students. You want more safeguards so that they are essentially not being ripped off by institutions. But a college education is still a very good investment, and I think universities have done a pretty poor job of marketing themselves, and they've basically become this political football for a long time on the right and now increasingly on the left. And as a result, their reputation is in tatters, and it's very difficult to find someone who will stand up for the good story that these universities actually do have to tell.
So the universities don't have to market themselves at all. The students can decide whether or not they want to attend college or they don't want to attend college. It's not really about the universities marketing themselves. They don't really have to do that. You either know if you want to go or you don't want to go. If you're considering certain professions, you have to go to college to do those professions. Like, you can't just be a doctor, obviously, with not going to med school. So these are things that people need to think about. I don't know why she's like, oh, they need to market themselves better. No, here's the thing, honey. If you're broke, you're broke. And if you can't afford it, you can't afford it, which means a lot of people have to take out student loans. So I feel like she doesn't want to really deal with the reality that we have in this country today, where the middle class is almost non-existent. And if the middle class is almost non-existent, what we really have are, I say, a handful of ultra rich, wealthy people in this country. And then you have like that bottom working class, and then there's working poor. So it's not an issue that these universities aren't marketing themselves well, People just really don't have the money. And a lot of younger people don't want to be saddled by debt. Let me tell you something, another thing. Debt is something that really will hold you back. It really does. Student loan debt is no joke. And I'm telling you from experience, if you don't have to take out student loans, don't take out the damn student loans. So if I could go back and do things all over again, what would I have done differently? I think I would have gone to a community college for the first 2 years, which would have been way cheaper. I wouldn't have had to take out student loans for that. And then I would have transferred to a 4-year university. If I could do it all over again, that's what I would have done. So I'm just telling you, I'm passing this on to you so you don't make the same mistake that I did. And then there's the reality of the 4 to 7 year recession. This is something that Professor Richard Wolff has talked about on his channel multiple times. This reality that this country goes into a recession every 4 to 7 years. So if you start college, let's say, we'll do 2025, this fall, 2025, and you graduate 4 years from now, there's no guarantee that we may not be in a recession. We could very much be in one. And then that could also impact your job choices. So these are just all the things that go together. What I have also noticed as well, in particular with my generation, I'm also a millennial, all of my friends work. None of my friends are stay-at-home moms. I had one friend who tried that didn't last long because they needed the money. And when I was growing up, my mom was able to stay at home with me until I went to kindergarten, and then she went back to work. My parents didn't have to pay for daycare. It's very different now where, like I said, all my friends, both people work. The wife and the husband, the girlfriend and the boyfriend, they all work. So ultimately, we are holding people back from establishing some type of generational wealth. And when you do that, of course, people are less likely to start families because they just can't afford it. I've been warning this for a long time, that we are becoming a society of forever renters. And I really do feel like a lot of the elites, this is what they want. They don't want you to own anything. They want a bunch of young people basically put and cramped into these micro unit apartments in these 15-minute cities where everything's within walking distance and they don't need a car and they can just bike to where they want to go. And yeah, there's that convenience of that. But then there's also the reality that your net worth is going to be zero or in the negative because you don't own anything. One of the ways I think to fix that is to allow people the opportunity to own their apartments. I think this should be nationwide. I don't think it should be required, but I think you should have the opportunity. So if you rent that apartment for 5 years, or some people might say that's too low. Okay, let's say 10 years. You rent that apartment for 10 years. Once you get to that 10th year, you should have the opportunity to own that unit. I mean, I don't know how else we're going to get out of this. I really don't. But I feel like we got to have a little bit of give and a little bit of leeway to help the young people.
But what about state schools, though, where they're still even much more expensive than they were, say, 20 years ago? And so going into debt, if you're going to Harvard, if you're going to Princeton, it could pay off and it could be worth it. These elite institutions.
State flagships are still a good deal.
No, but if you're debating going to, say, a school that might have a more dubious record and taking out a bunch of loans, as some of the more dubious schools that you've talked about, these for-profit universities. But I don't know, is it a good investment when you do have so much education that is available on the internet now and just through various ways?
No doubt, there are lots of great opportunities for tradespeople, and lots of career paths that don't require a 4-year degree. And I think we should be making it more feasible for students, for young people, and mid-career people, for that matter, to enroll in those kinds of programs. And we don't do enough in terms of apprenticeships and these, again, these various trade programs and things like that. But I don't think we should write off 4-year degrees. I think that those are generally quite a good investment. Again, as long as you are talking about the schools that actually do get screened and that are trying to make sure that they're—
For the record, I don't think we should write off. I would tell people still to go to college.
I mean,
I'm just not surprised, I guess, to see the slipping support, because I think people in general feel like they've been sold.
Yeah. So let me say this here, because I think this is important to stress. She mentioned the state schools. I'm sorry, but a lot of the state A lot of the state universities right now are also expensive. Look up the cost of tuition for the University of Massachusetts, the flagship school in Amherst. I think you might be surprised. I just told you, University of Chapel Hill is a state school, but it's expensive. Those prices have increased dramatically over the years from what I remember when I was in undergrad. And so I disagree with her about that. And then there's this reality right here. As AI wipes jobs, Google CEO Sundar Pichai says it's up to everyday people to adapt accordingly. We will have to work through societal disruption. So you see, this is what I've been telling everybody about. So you go into these schools, and if you don't have to take out student loans, this isn't going to hurt you as much. But if you do have to take out student loans and you took out these loans to go to this school to get this 4-year degree and then turn around, then that job, that particular field is now being overtaken by AI. What do? Tech leaders are split on whether AI will bring about jobs Armageddon or a utopia of zero work and universal high income. Now, Google CEO Sundar is adding to the debate. And in his eyes, everyone's job could be impacted by the new tech, even his own. People will just have to adapt accordingly. And this is what, we've been sounding the alarm about this, guys. So you can do all those things that that woman said on that panel. And if AI consumes your job, then what? Big reality. So people ask me, is college worth it? I think if you don't have to take out student loans and you're going into a field that's gonna, do well, or you're going into a field that's going to make over $100,000 a year and you do have to take out student loans, then I would say yes. But even then, there's no guarantees that that field is still going to be popping by the time you graduate from undergrad. So there's things you have to weigh here. But I just don't want more people to go into debt. So if you were to ask me, well, I got to take out $50,000, $60,000 in student loans to go to college, I would say no. I would say no from my experience. So that's my take on that. And some people may not like that, but I'm just keeping it real with you. just letting you know that's how I would go forward with that. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.